Units of the Russian occupation army during the day conducted offensive actions in 4 directions in the east of Ukraine. The defense forces successfully repelled more than 40 enemy attacks. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced this in its evening operational update. The troops of the invaders continue to focus on conducting offensive actions in the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Mariinka directions. In other areas of the front, the enemy defends. In the Lyman direction, units of the invaders tried to advance in the area of the settlement of Bilohorivka. Ukrainian soldiers successfully repelled the attacks. In the Bakhmut direction, the defense forces repelled the invaders' attempts to advance in the direction of Bodanivka and Chasiv Yar. Fierce street battles continue in Bakhmut itself. In the Avdiivka direction, attacks by Russian occupiers were repulsed near the settlements of Avdiivka, Severin and Pervomaysk. In the Mariinka direction, the invaders tried to attack in the Novomikhailivka area. Also, enemy attacks were repulsed in Mariinka. As Ukrainian news agency earlier reported, on April 27, a video appeared on the network how a multi-story building with the image of a family on the wall was blown up in Bakhmut, Donetsk region. We also reported that the National Guard of Ukraine said that in Bakhmut National Guardsmen keep important logistics routes from attacks by the invaders. The General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces reported on April 29 that Russia had lost 190,040 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of its full-scale invasion on February 24 last year. This number includes 580 casualties Russian forces suffered just over the past day. According to the report, Russia also lost 3,697 tanks, 7,184 armored fighting vehicles, 5,836 vehicles and fuel tanks, 2,908 artillery systems, 543 multiple launch rocket systems, 294 air defense systems, 308 airplanes, 294 helicopters, 2,471 drones, and 18 boats. Ukrainian troops repel Russian attacks, and hope Western arms turn the tide. 2 Russian jets screamed up to the Ukrainian lines near the town of Vuhledar on Thursday, dropped their explosives and banked sharply, hurtling back from where they came. They left in their wake 2 large black plumes rising from the detonations. After a brief lull, Russian forces have of late intensified their assaults on positions around Vuhledar, a coal mining town and strategic crossroads in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine that has been the scene of epic tank battles. Russians have made several attempts to seize the city, only to falter in the face of Ukrainian resistance. "I don't know where the Russians are getting so much artillery," said a 43-year-old private named Pavlo who operates a heavy machine gun atop an American-made Max X-Pro armored fighting vehicle in this sector. "And there are also tanks, helicopters and jets. The guys can't get in and out of their positions, the firing is so heavy." As temperatures rise and the viscous mud begins to dry and harden into terrain ideal for heavy armored vehicles, both the Ukrainians and Russians are gearing up for the summer fighting season. Moscow's apparent attempt to seize the initiative with a late winter offensive yielded little ground, but as the incessant pounding of artillery and rocket fire around Vuhledar on Thursday attests, the Russians still have a lot of fight left. Much focus is on an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive, which could begin at any time, bolstered by a flood of advanced arms from the United States and its allies. But Ukrainian troops know that as much as they need the new weaponry, it is no guarantee of success. The Kremlin's forces still have a big numerical advantage in heavy weapons, including aircraft and armored vehicles. The Russians have built defensive positions, and the Ukrainians are still learning how to use some of their new gear. Positioned through a warren of trench works in the farm fields around Vuhledar, Ukraine's forces are not battling against the newly mobilized troops and former prison inmates Russia has sent into combat with minimal training on other sectors of the front lines. Instead, they are fighting some of Russia's best-trained forces, including naval infantry troops from Russia's Far East, and casualties on both sides have been heavy. The fighters are charged up to go forward regardless of the fact that there are minuses, said a Ukrainian company commander who uses the call sign Dolphin. "We're losing in numbers and losing perhaps in a number of areas because of our weaponry. I'm not going to say that everything is going well, is going great. But there is one but," he said. "There are more of them, but we're stronger." Despite his force's shortcomings, Dolphin said, they were recently able to retake a position earlier lost to the Russian military, a small victory that he said nevertheless came at a cost. We lost our best people, those who died and those who were taken out of the fight because of injuries, he said. Ukraine's leaders hope that the infusion of Western weaponry, particularly tanks and armored fighting vehicles, will help even the scales. The forces near Vuhledar are already benefiting from a fleet of the Max Pros, part of a class of mine-resistant vehicles known as MRAPs. Pavlo, who wears a silver skull mask into battle, said that he and his team have been hit several times with ordnance from grenade launchers while driving their Max X Pro at the front and have come out unscathed. The vehicle also once took a tank round to one of its wheels and was able to hobble away. It comes with air conditioning and a pretty decent sound system. On the team's playlist Thursday was Creedence Clearwater Revival's Fortunate Son, and The Animals' House of the Rising Sun. Speaking to a reporter after firing off a few hundred rounds from the vehicle's 12.7mm gun at a military training range not far from the fighting in Vuhledar, Pavlo said Ukraine's forces needed more of this kind of heavy equipment if they were going to make further progress. The Russians have tanks, they have BMPs and BTRs, he said, referring to Russian-made armored fighting vehicles. We can't go up against them with rifles. We need heavy equipment on the ground and support in the air. But nearby Ukrainian troops were learning that making full use of new weapons takes time. A young sergeant who goes by the name Michael was showing soldiers how to use an American-made Mk-19 grenade launcher, and it was not going well. The weapon is more accurate and versatile than its Soviet-era analogs, Michael said. But there was one problem. Ukrainian soldiers were having trouble figuring out how to use it. At the time it entered into service with the Ukrainian armed forces, there were no instructors who could explain how to work it, he said. The manuals were only in English and in the Ukrainian military few speak English. It is up to Michael, who is 23, but has 5 years' experience in the military operating grenade launchers, to train them. He is the only one in his company who knows how to use it, he said.